Okay, so there's the hose clamp I gotta come out. And with this long extension and the socket driver, I can simply reach in there and line that up, take that hose clamp, as you can see, and loosen it right up. So it really makes it easy to do this. I've got a couple of more I've got to get out. One of them is in the bottom of the for the exhaust bellows, but the next one I have to get out is the one up on the top, which is actually in the wrong position. It should be facing down at about 1 o'clock, so you can actually get at it. There we go. So I got it in there, and I can just spin that hose clamp out, which is great. What's nice about the tape, it just holds it in place, makes it easy for you to get it loose. There we go. So that should be loose enough now. I can get in there and I can take that hose clamp and work it loose by hand and then take that out. So I'm going to do the exhaust bellows. Now the exhaust bellows is going to be on the bottom. So what I've got to do is I've got to tilt this up, support it, and then take that hose clamp off. Now once that hose clamp's off, that bellows probably hose, I can just pop that off, and then I can take this whole assembly and I can take the whole assembly out. All right, so I've got the hose clamp disconnected and I pulled up on the bell housing and I have the exhaust bellows just come off. I just took a screwdriver and worked on a little hose clamp tool and it pops right off. So I've got one more hose clamp that I have to undo. I've got this one undone. I've got to get to the water pickup one, which is up top, and I've got to undo that. But right now, if I work on the inside with my hand, I can work on the other bellows. I can get that U-joint bellows probably loose if I work my hand around the inside. It's a little dirty, but if I work around the inside, I'm going to get that hose clamp loose. Then I'm going to pull the whole assembly out and I can get to the water pickup hose clamp easier. So I'm going to work that drive bellows loose first. Okay, I got that upper bellows loose. I grabbed right here and I gave it a pull back and I could get my hands on the inside and press the bellows down and work it loose some, and then boom, comes right out. So now I've got the whole bell housing almost out. The only hose left is the water hose. So I got to take that water hose and we're going to take that out. So I'm going to replace the drive bellows. I'm going to replace the exhaust bellows, the gimbal bearing while I got this out, and obviously that cable. Now, that cable, this is a great time to talk about taking that cable out. If you're in a tight situation and you're trying to get that cable to go, you know, inside the boat and up around and through the exhaust and everything, this is the time that you need to try to get the old cable to go back through, which is the hard part. So what you've got, this is out. This is nice to have this out. I can slide the cable through this housing and thread it into this housing with it off. And then what I can do is I can take that, the residual cable, the old one, and I can take that, I'm going to push some through this way. So I can take the old cable, and now what I can do is I can attach that to the new cable, because the new cable has to go through here. What I like to do also is I like to take the new cable, the brand new accordionized bellows, put some soap on it, a little grease, whatever you want to do, slide the new accordionized bellows up the new cable, right? Then you can disconnect and get this bellows out of the way. Now you can go from the other end and you can take a newer, and I have a used inner core, and you can slide the inner core back this way. So take the old inner core out, pull it out, slide the new inner core through. It'll stick out through this end, and then slide it through the new cable. Then tape them together. That holds them together a little better. Then you can pull the old cable and the new cable up through the transom and through the back of the boat, up around the exhaust. So that's an easier way to do this. So we're going to get that hose clamp off next, and then we'll go through the reassembly of how you do that on this. So I've got to take this bonding wire out, and this bonding wire goes on the inside of the gimbal ring into the outside. You definitely want to have this bonding wire intact when you put it back together. There should be bonding wires that attach the steering on the inside to the engine. There should be bonding wires out here. There's also in some engines a bonding wire back down here for the gimbal ring that attaches to the other underside here. So all of these bonding wires are critical. You have to have those on there. If they don't, you don't have continuity between the anode and the outer parts, and that sets up for galvanic corrosion, and these outer parts that aren't bonded will corrode. The zinc would only protect whatever it's attached to. Ideally, if everything's bonded together, then everything has the same potential, and that anode is what's going to corrode. Right, so here's another little trick to getting this out. This screw is pretty frozen in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my screwdriver. I'm going to get that in that screw, and I'm going to hold it. I'm going to push in, try to get it as center as I can. Right, and then I'm going to hit it with a hammer and try and get it to shock it loose. So here we go. So I'm going to turn it counterclockwise while I'm giving it some love tap. And it is moving, which is good. So I'm going to try to work it back and forth a little bit. And it's moving. So now a little bit of penetrant, and that screw's definitely going to come out. So a little catalyst agent in it is better. So I'm going to tighten it up, loosen it, keep pushing in. Ah, there it goes. It's going to come right out. Nice. Excellent. Another nice thing about freshwater boats. Parts come apart pretty readily. There we go. Don't lose the screw. I'll put that baby back in there so I can't lose it. Yep, don't forget your bonding wires. Those are very critical for these. All right, so I've got that set up. I've got the bonding wire off. All right, I've got that hose I got to get off. I'm going to take this hose off, and I'd recommend that you replace this hose when you're doing a bellows job. This one's all dry rotted and cracked. You can see it probably would last, but you know what? It's unknown age, so we're going to replace it. So make it easier on yourself. Get in there with a razor knife. Take a razor knife and just cut it across there. You know, drag it across there. Make sure you use a brand new blade. Once you get it most of the way cut through, you take a pick tool, hose clamp pick tool, just wiggle it in there, and you can split that hose right in half. It just popped right in half for me. So now that I've got that hose, it's basically split in half, I can just pull it right off of there. So we're going to take that right out now. Okay, so we've got the whole assembly out. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take that gimbal bearing out, pull this exhaust hose. So these tabs on Merc Cruiser are very, very important. These are bonding tabs. You absolutely have to have these on both ends. And what they do is they bond the hose clamp to the actual housing. And again, remember the bonding wires. That's the critical thing. These bonding clamps prevent the hose clamp from being isolated, because if the hose clamp becomes isolated, then what happens is the actual screw is made of a different grade of stainless than the band-in. Is usually what I find is the screw just rots away. You can even use, an ideal 3/16 stainless hose clamp, and that is a little bit different in its molecular structure than this is, and the screw head just rots away, and then the hose clamp just fails. So make sure that those stay in place when you're putting these back together. That's really, really critical. So if I look on the top of this one, this band clamp's missing on here. That one wasn't on there, so they had left that out. That hose clamp, when I went to take it apart, you know, the screw head had rotted away. It's around here someplace on the floor, but that's, you know, that hose clamp was almost failed because that bonding clip wasn't there. This might have been in fresh water, so it'll last a lot longer. Now, when you're going to put this back together, the thing you want to do is you want to put the bellows onto the inner part of the transom assembly first, kind of like the way I've taken it apart. You're going to want to put this hose onto the transom assembly first. You can then put that hose clamp on the assembly in your hand and tighten that up. This bellows needs to go on here first, and then you can slide the exhaust into place. Don't put your shift shaft in yet. You need a special tool that goes in here, and that will pull this exhaust bellows onto the actual assembly. So we'll do that one in a little bit. Right now we're going to get that gimbal bearing out.